Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jay the Great here and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we have an all new and very intriguing video by the Great Six, and as you can tell by the title, this is Neji versus Sasuke, the real winner. So folks, as far as the Naruto community is concerned, this debate has been one of biblical proportions. It is one of the most contentious and highly debated topics in the entire Naruto fandom, and rightfully so. Now, clearly, respective versions of these two will greatly alter the winner of this matchup, and clearly the most debated and most contentious matchup of these two is final Chunin exam versions of Sasuke and Neji, right? We have Neji, who was stated as the #1 recruit at the beginning of the Chunin exams, and we have Sasuke, who seemingly had a evolution of leaps and bounds, when considering he couldn't even keep up with weight-bounded Rock Lee at the beginning of Chunin exams, and by the end of it, we all know what he did. He was able to damage Gaara, who stated himself, "I've never been damaged before." And he had more success than someone that he couldn't keep up with in Rock Lee by the end of the Chunin exams. We're comparing their two respective performances against Gaara, right? So, to be quite frank, there seems to be arguments for both sides, and because of that, if I were to line up 100 people in a Naruto fandom, honestly, the chances of them picking either side is a flip of a coin at this point, because genuinely, this topic has the Naruto fandom at odds. It has it divided. It is one of those topics that is so contentious and is so ambiguous to some extent that it is truly divided. I'm not going to give my specific answer and who I think would win just yet. I want to see Six's take on this. I'm actually very intrigued to see what empirical evidence he'll extrapolate from canonical literature and from the anime, etc. And I'm actually very intrigued to see what his take is specifically on this and why his take is what it is. I'm very intrigued for it. But before I begin, anyways, really appreciate it. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications, and stay updated with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy man, you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time, screen. Let's see what Six says about this one.
Who would win if Sasuke were to fight Neji? For this, I'll really only be looking at part 1 of the series, since Neji is barely relevant during Shippuden and doesn't do much of anything until his death in the war arc. This is a matchup most people agree would have been really cool to see, especially due to all the parallels between Sasuke and Neji, who both use dojutsu and are lauded as geniuses in their generation, hailing from two of the most prominent clans in the Leaf Village. It's a real shame we never got to see this fight go down within the series, but I hope this will explain how it would turn out if the fight did end up happening.
I definitely agree.
I'll primarily be using information from the manga, data books, and fan books to sort this out.
Fan
I'll
books,
also be including some from anime materials like the anime profile guides, as they include a lot of useful information about this part of the series. For this video, I'll start at the very beginning of the series, and we'll work our way down to the final valley during the Sasuke retrieval arc, just to see how this fight would go. But before we get into it, obviously, if you like versus battles, like the video and subscribe. Have tons of other ones on the channel that you can watch after this one. But let's get started with pre-exam Sasuke versus pre-exam Neji. Even early on, Sasuke was very talented compared to his other contemporaries. During his debut, his identity as one of the last surviving members of the formerly strongest clan in the Leaf Village, the Uchiha clan, is the first thing told to us about Sasuke. And this has even set high expectations with Kakashi. Sasuke then was skilled enough to press Kakashi and force him to put away his book.
Impressive moment
Naruto
for sure.
And Sakura, who were easily dealt with, while Sasuke had the senses to hang back and observe how Kakashi fought. Sasuke then goes on to hone these skills, along with others related to chakra control, taught to him by Kakashi during Team 7's first mission to the Land of Waves. Sasuke doesn't do too much during this arc, but he does have a few impressive showings that help highlight how talented he was at this point, like easily defeating the Demon Brothers through Chunin, which goes to show while Sasuke held the rank of a Genin, he was far beyond this level in true power. He also went on to press Haku alongside Naruto early during their encounter. However, it's heavily implied that Haku held back during this part of the fight, so ultimately this doesn't mean much as far as strength, but it should still speak to his skill as a shinobi.
Agreed.
Sasuke also displayed many advanced skills for a Genin at this point, with Kakashi even being astonished by not only his intelligence and skills in taijutsu, but also his capabilities with fire style. At this point, Sasuke was already very skilled in the use of many powerful fire style techniques, which is uncharacteristic of a Genin. He is very adept in the use of fireball jutsu, which he mastered at a young age, and when he used it during the bell test, it was powerful enough to make a crater in the ground. Sasuke can also use smaller scale techniques like Phoenix Flower Jutsu, where he can shoot numerous smaller fireballs that he can even conceal with weapons like shuriken, or the Dragon Flame Jutsu, which can travel up instruments like wires after Sasuke uses them to restrain the target. Sasuke, like other members of the Uchiha clan, had also awakened the Sharingan by this point, albeit it wasn't fully matured yet like Kakashi's or Itachi's, so he couldn't yet use its basic abilities to the same degree as the first data book even implies. However, the Sharingan still grants Sasuke the basic ability to analyze and copy any technique in front of him, whether it be ninjutsu, genjutsu, or
Let's read it real quick. Let's read the statement. The Sharingan's true power, in addition to the threat posed by its insight, is its copying ability, that of making one's own any technique one sets eyes upon. Chakra or hand seals, all the principles bringing the jutsu into existence will be recorded into the caster's memory in the blink of an eye, making its utilization possible. Of course, the necessary volume of chakra and physical ability requirements must be met, but should one find themselves in some kind of dire situation, the Uchiha blood will demonstrate its accumulated experience, and never will those who have inherited it know any limits. Now, folks, it's important to analyze this statement, right? And then look at the empirical evidence provided of individuals with such a Sharingan. Now, the last statement here, never will those who have inherited it know any limits. Clearly, that's hyperbolic, and that is established for the purposes of establishing lore for the Uchiha clan. Clearly, they have limits, right? Clearly, we saw Sasuke during the 5 Kage Summit struggle with version 2 Raikage, and he could barely react to him. Right, we've seen instances. Obito Uchiha failed to react to Minato when they fought during the Nine Tails attack when Obito manipulated the Nine Tails. Clearly there's a limit there. So we can't automatically assume that this statement is to be revered and considered hyperliteral. Right, that's an important distinction to make. I'm just pointing that out there. 6 is not the type to do that anyway, but I'm just saying. Some people will use that statement and take it hyperliterally and say, oh, anyone with a Sharingan has no limits, according to this statement. Right, and I'm not even exactly sure where this is from. If it's from a fan book, in my opinion, those are not canonical. If it's from a data book, then of course it's canonical, but hyperbolic, hence not literal or hyperliteral. Let's continue on though.
Jutsu, while also enhancing the speed he moves at. Also, despite how skilled Sasuke already was at this stage, his fighting style still had its weaknesses, as Kakashi says and demonstrates during the bell test. Sasuke's usage of ninjutsu leaves him open and vulnerable to sneak attacks, mainly due to his inexperience as a shinobi. So even at later stages, Sasuke has to be careful if he resorts to his fire style. The Sharingan, while a useful tool, also has its downsides, which were highlighted in the next arc when Sasuke went up against Rock Lee, which brings us to our next subject, how Sasuke compared to other genin like Lee and Neji at this specific point.
Right.
Moving on to the Chunin exams, which is the next time we see Sasuke fight, Sakura implies he may be stronger than ever before with his Sharingan. However, that didn't help him one bit against Rock Lee.
Nope.
Lee, without even taking his weights off or using any of the gates, easily takes the upper hand against Sasuke and starts beating him up. And would have done him incredibly dirty if Guy hadn't arrived earlier and prevented Lee from using the Hidden Lotus. While Sasuke's Sharingan allowed him to see and copy Lee's moves, he still wasn't fast enough to move in response to him at this stage, as Lee himself noted. And then this encounter highlights one of the Sharingan's biggest weaknesses, that while its user may be able to analyze something with it, if they aren't fast enough to move accordingly, then the Sharingan is of literally no help. This also doesn't speak too well to how this version of Sasuke would perform in a fight against Neji, which brings us to our next point of how strong Neji is. Like Sasuke, Neji was a prodigious member of a highly talented clan, and while his upbringing may not have been as tragic or as lonely as Sasuke's, he was just as motivated to become as strong as he could in order to defy the destiny he thought was laid before him, even if he didn't realize it yet.
Right.
Neji was acknowledged early on as being one of the strongest genin of the Leaf Village, going into the Chunin exams with multiple anime guides and Lee himself even expressing clear inferiority to Neji at multiple points at this stage. So it'd be pretty fair to say Neji would have beaten Sasuke pretty easily at this point, since he should be far superior to Lee, who literally just clowned Sasuke.
Correct.
However, Neji does still have his limits at this stage when it comes to speed specifically. Lee is implied to exceed Neji in how fast he can move and attack based on Guy's statements, their literal teacher, as well as the volume extra citing weightless Lee had completely unrivaled speed, among the Genin anyway. And
Right.
he would presumably grow even faster when using the 8 gates, which are stated to drastically increase the speed and strength of the user. Interestingly enough, it's heavily implied within the manga that when opening the 5th gate, Lee becomes fast enough to defeat Neji, with Guy citing this as the key to beating Neji,
Correct.
and the anniversary guide regarding the Hidden Lotus as having speed that surpasses Neji's Gentle Fist. While the
Now, I would like to steelman this argument real quick, right, and add on top of that, because I agree completely with Six here. A statement, right, in a serious situation by the very teacher that taught both Neji and Rock Lee is to be revered. For some odd reason, there are individuals out there that are pro Neji, right, that don't want to take this statement literally or revere it as it should be. I don't understand that. Some people think narrative implication is a fallacious way of approaching a fictional-based reality debate. That is very disingenuous to me, because they know more than likely that this is a statement that is to be revered. There are individuals out there that will only go based off empirical evidence such as feats to establish their claims. And I think it's a very disingenuous tactic to try and win a debate. It's very disingenuous and it's fallacious as well, because you're appealing to ignorance here. You're pretending that someone that has this status, being the very teacher of the two individuals that we're discussing, making a statement in a serious situation about a student A in comparison to student B, right? In this case, Rock Lee and Neji. You can't just simply say, oh, narrative implication is weak and it's flimsy. No, it's not. In fact, it's the only argument to make in a topic that is deemed ambiguous. That is the best argument to make, right? You might not be able to make a 100% concrete rational deduction, but there is such thing as propositional induction, where you can more solidly guarantee that your premise is stronger than the antithesis of your premise. And people don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to presuppose that induction exists. But in fictional-based reality, where the writer can't, outline every single second of every single fight of every single individual due to restrictions of writing and anime and cinema, they can simply make implications. They can simply write out these implications that we must acknowledge, and from those we make propositional inductions at times. That's the best we could do. And Six is doing that very well here. And I don't really understand why people want to just disregard that and pretend that isn't a solid, rational analysis, when it clearly is. It's just very, very bizarre to me. It's very bizarre. But let's continue on.
Viz omits any specific mention of Neji, the English fan translation and the actual Japanese manga do, which means the Viz is a mistranslation here. However, you can still interpret Guy's statement as being about defeating Neji. However, while Lee moves and attacks faster than Neji without his weights, based on the nature of the statements, he should still be able to keep up with him until he uses the 5th gate. Neji is also incredibly skilled for a Genin, and even early on he was capable of using most of his clan's famous techniques. One reason for Neji's skill and the cornerstone of his entire fighting style was the Byakugan, one of the great 3 ocular powers like the Sharingan and Rinnegan. With his Byakugan, Neji can see across vast distances in all directions, barring a minute blind spot on the back of his neck.
Correct.
And can even see through solid objects and obstructions like barriers or walls. The perceptive abilities of the Byakugan even go beyond that of the Sharingan, at least according to Kakashi, allowing the user to see an enemy's chakra network, which makes the Hyuga clan's signature move possible, the Gentle Fist. With the Gentle Fist, Neji and other users of the style aim to defeat their opponents through using the chakra-laced palm strikes to direct attacks at the enemy's chakra networks and vital organs. And this is so effective that he can completely bypass an enemy's durability, because like Kakashi notes, it is completely impossible to strengthen your own organs.
Correct.
So if Neji puts his hands on Sasuke, it doesn't matter how tanky Sasuke is, how much he can endure, he's getting roughed up.
It's precision.
Neji can also apply the Gentle Fist in more creative ways, with more advanced techniques like the heavenly rotation, where he uses the gentle fist and the chakra emitted from his body to spin, creating a defensive barrier that applies the principles of the gentle fist to deflect almost any attack. He also notes during his fight with Kidomaru that when using this, he can emit chakra from his entire body as well as his palms. This technique is also so advanced that Neji's uncle, Hiyashi, the literal head of the Hyuga clan, believes that his mastery in it at such a young age was enough to say that he had completely surpassed the main branch of the clan entirely in skill.
Correct.
According to Tenten though, Neji's most fearsome ability is the 8 trigrams palms, which allows him to target an enemy's chakra points, shutting down their chakra network and causing them to collapse after being rendered completely unable to use any techniques. This certainly would be a way for Neji to beat Sasuke. However, like Naruto, who forced his chakra points open through using Kurama's chakra, Sasuke also has an answer to this, which brings us back to Sasuke's progression and his newest ability he'd acquired shortly after the start of the Chunin exams, the Curse Seal of Heaven. After being given the Curse Seal of Heaven by Orochimaru during the Forest of Death, Sasuke awakened a frightening new power. After being granted with terrifying strength and allowing his chakra to run wild, according to the fan books in Dosu, Sasuke made quick work of and completely outclassed and scared away Dosu and Zaku, who easily handled weighted Lee shortly before this. While this alone would show the curse mark even back then took Sasuke to a greater level of power than when he lost to Lee, there are other implications that relate directly to Neji. In fact, Neji was planning on fighting the Soundgenin himself to avenge Lee before sensing Sasuke's dark presence and declaring he wouldn't need to get involved. After watching what Sasuke did to them, he was astonished, saying he never knew the Uchiha clan were so strong. So while it's not concrete either way, Sasuke's ability to impress Neji at this stage says a lot. While the Curse Seal completely drains Sasuke after it wears off, it still provides a huge boost in his chakra when in use based on the examples I just cited, and Dosu even noting as much. Which means while Neji probably could and would defeat Sasuke at this stage even quicker than Lee did, Sasuke can come back with his curse mark, then the result becomes a lot less clear. But what we can say is if he doesn't defeat Neji with a few attacks, Neji would probably outlast him and then Sasuke would just be on the floor again.
It's a fair analysis.
However, this all changes once we get towards the end of the Chunin exams. After going and training with Kakashi for a month after the Forest of Death and preliminaries, Sasuke returns much stronger than before with a few new tricks up his sleeve and a much cooler outfit. Sasuke, while arriving fashionably late, was hyped to no end by almost every god, with the anime profiles referring to Sasuke as the strongest of the leaf, of the Genin anyway. And Hiruzen noting he displays much more skill than his peers in the areas of ninjutsu and taijutsu. This alone would be enough for some people to say Sasuke would defeat Neji. However, we get even more from this fight with Gaara. A few important factors going into that fight that a lot of people either like to get twisted or disregard was the brief relationship between Sasuke and Gaara as opponents. Gaara was spooked after setting eyes on Sasuke, with Temari and Kankuro noting that they've never seen Gaara this worried before, and the second data book using this to say Sasuke was Gaara's strongest opponent yet.
Bingo.
This also happens to be the main point of contention when it comes to Sasuke versus Lee and other participants in the exam, whether or not it's talking about literal raw power or overall strength and speed, and there's not a lot to suggest the latter. For one, Gaara was stronger during his fight with Sasuke than he was against Rock Lee.
Bingo.
And this is due to the fact that Gaara and his sand grow stronger anytime he kills people or takes in blood, according to Gaara himself. And if you watch my channel, you should already know this is consistent with information we know about Shinobi growing stronger from fighting as well as training, which ultimately casts Sasuke's performance against Gaara in an even better light than Lee's. Sasuke
Right, this is another aspect I want to discuss, and I'm very glad that Sixth touched up on it. The semantics, right? The second data book states that Sasuke is the strongest opponent that Gaara has ever faced up until this point. People like to dispute the semantical meaning. You can make a simple, rational, inductive argument here. So take 100 statements that say something similar about other individuals. Now, in a bunch of probabilities, what is the probability that these statements mean flat out that opponent A is stronger than opponent B because it's stated in a canonical piece of literature? What are the odds? I would say pretty high. In fictional-based reality where battle is prioritized and is a highlight in the very manga itself, when someone says opponent A is stronger than opponent B, it then means that opponent A is superior to opponent B. Now, if someone states in a canonical piece of literature, opponent A is the strongest opponent B has ever faced, then it means opponent A is superior to all previous opponents that opponent B has ever faced. On a balance of probabilities, that is what it means, using a rational inductive argument. People want to discuss the odds of semantical meaning with statements. I think that's just a very desperate attempt to try and sway individuals into believing your perspective when your perspective is the outlandish one in this situation, right? Especially with this aspect, with a canonical piece of literature stating opponent A is the strongest opponent B has ever faced. It's as simple as that. With you trying to argue against semantics, you are fighting a losing battle unless you are debating a very subpar debater that doesn't know how to make a rational inductive argument. Right? So I'm really glad Six touched up on that, because I agree. I agree completely with what he's saying right now. Truly. So far so good by Six. As always, let's continue though.
Also got progressively faster, even in base as the fight continued, starting out around the level of base Lee with his weights according to Guy, and then moving faster and being compared to weightless Lee by Guy and Rock Lee himself, before continuing to move even faster than Lee, which Lee remarks that Sasuke has truly gained a high-speed body like his, which implies that he should be faster than Neji, at least when he's using the Chidori, because that's what Lee is referring to. Once he works his way up to these speeds, it's important to note that if his showing against Gaara are of any use, he starts off much slower than this, and until he reaches his max speed, Neji wouldn't have literally any problems keeping up with Sasuke.
Right.
However, this is where
That's
Sasuke's
fair.
abilities comes in. Sasuke possesses the Sharingan on top of this, which Lee even notes further enhances his speed when used, and he even believes that with the 5th gate, he wouldn't be able to evade the attacks like Gaara's Sand that Sasuke can. And this allows Sasuke to spring into a direct assault, unlike Lee. Additionally, Sasuke also mastered a new technique, the Chidori, which focuses on condensing lightning style chakra into the user's hand in order to create a fast head-on stabbing attack, typically used for assassinations, which is why it's typically regarded by shinobi like Might Guy as being similarly dangerous to the 8 gates. The Chidori also greatly enhances Sasuke's speed even further and made him powerful enough to injure Gaara to the point where he resorted to transforming into Shikaku. The technique should also be capable of dealing with Neji's rotation, similarly to how Naruto did with the kunai, especially since it overpowered Gaara's Sand, which has been directly compared to Neji's rotation as a defense. So since Sasuke approaches and reaches Lee's level of speed in base, then exceeds it with the Sharingan and Chidori, while it's still possible for Neji to win, it'd be a lot harder to argue he does.
Correct.
And there's absolutely nothing he could do to stop a Chidori from Sasuke. This brings us to the next and last part of the video, how it would go down at the end of part 1, and how the outcome changes again, and spoiler, things don't get any better for Neji. After leaving the village with the Sound 4 and undergoing
Sasuke only gets stronger.
curse seal, Sasuke gains even greater strength, and while a lot of people like to throw around a lot of vague statements that don't go anywhere concerning Drunk Lee, Sick Kimimaro, or Gaara, they still have enough to tell us how badly Neji would lose if confronted Sasuke at the Final Valley instead of Naruto. For one, we're not told anything about Neji's progression between the end of the exams at this point, so it's not really clear if he grew significantly stronger compared to before, when he would have most likely lost to a weaker Sasuke with his Chidori and Sharingan.
Right.
His fight with Kidomaru isn't of any help either, since while Kidomaru fought him in a range and he still pressed and overwhelmed and nearly killed Neji in Curse Mark 2 after discovering his blind spot, so this still speaks to Neji's overall capabilities as a fighter. While Sasuke lost to Sakan and Yukon before leaving the village, they are stated to be the stronger members of the Sound 4 alongside Tayuya, whereas Jirobo and Kidomaru are considered the weakest members by Tayuya, Kabuto, and Orochimaru.
Correct.
The Sound 4 are also
good observation.
weak compared to Jonin like Kakashi, even as a unit, with Kidomaru himself admitting as much before they all needed Curse Mark 2 to
Great scaling.
two weaker Jonin who were exhausted and just returned to the village from a mission. Upon completing the stabilization of his curse seal, Sasuke was compared to Kimimaro, who is said to be and portrayed as leagues above the rest of the Sound 4. However, it gets even worse once we look at how Sasuke compares to the Naruto he fought. After he stopped toying around and fully developed his Sharingan, Sasuke was fast and strong enough to effortlessly pummel KM0 Naruto. His Sharingan also became much more developed here and capable, now able to effortlessly predict the movements of his opponents. He even says he can now conserve chakra and line up his attacks based on where the enemy will appear, and became so much stronger that he initially mistook the boost for the curse mark. This has some pretty serious implications, since the second data book confirms that Naruto was the strongest he'd ever been after releasing Kurama's chakra against Sasuke in the Final Valley, saying he'd unleashed his ultimate or utmost strength so far. Well, this would not only imply Sasuke, even without the curse mark at this stage, would be superior to the Naruto that fought on par with and defeated Neji, but also the KM0 Naruto, who is implied to be stronger than Kakashi and Zabuza in sheer power in the Land of Waves, and stronger than Haku, who was superior to both of them. This means Sasuke would reach these Jonin levels even without the curse seal, and should be able to easily defeat Neji, who has struggled with or lost to several weaker opponents.
Yeah, this version of Sasuke,
well,
it's not even really debatable
Sasuke
who went between him and Neji.
Goes on to scare Kabuto just by flaring up his chakra, and Kabuto is noted as Kakashi level. Sasuke obviously also grows much stronger when using the curse seal, especially the second stage. Even weaker curse seals like the ones bestowed upon the Sound 4 can grant the user 10 times as much strength and chakra than before when the second stage is used. However, it should be noted this transformation doesn't last too long and heavily drains the user to the point where it can kill them if it's overused. However, Sasuke wouldn't even need it in this fight, as I already said before. If he uses it, Neji immediately loses.
Correct.
There's no hope for him.
He's vastly inferior.
Sasuke's techniques also get much stronger in this form, like the Black Chidori, which was powerful enough to match Naruto's Vermilion Rasengan, which was enhanced heavily by Kurama's chakra, and he gains 2 large hand-like appendages, which he can use his wings to fly or shield himself from attacks. Sasuke in this form was also much stronger than before, implying he'd exceeded KM1 Naruto or One-Tailed Naruto, remarking he'd become more special than even him, before easily deflecting his track with a wing, and then going on to clash evenly with Naruto in one of the most iconic panels of the entire series.
Agreed.
Which was described as the manga and data books as being the ultimate or largest scale battle between Genin at the time. It's also important to note that while the fight ended in a clash, it has always been characterized as a Sasuke W due to the fact that Naruto lost consciousness and went down before he did.
Yep.
And as Naruto says himself during the reunion, he was completely at Sasuke's mercy after that. So once we start talking about anything after the Chunin exams, there's just no hope for Neji to beat any form of Sasuke, let alone Curse Mark 2 Sasuke that defeated KM1 Naruto in the Final Valley.
Exactly.
But that's it for this video. Obviously, if you liked it, leave a
Great
like
scaling.
on it.
Great scaling in this one.
Subscribe if you liked it as well. If you think Neji wins, let me know why you think Neji could beat Curse Mark 2 Sasuke.
Yeah, that's not happening.
But other than that, have a nice day.
Great video 6 as always. I definitely want to get my thoughts here. So the one that interested me most was the most contentious one, which is final Chunin exam Sasuke versus final Chunin exam Neji. That's the most contentious. We're talking about end of part 1. Neji gets fucked up. Neji lost to one of the weaker Sound 4 ninja. Then we get Sasuke, them being implied to be over base Kakashi and base Guy, who are definitely the strongest Jonin in the Leaf, with 2 mid Jonin giving the Sound 4 all they could ask for after doing a mission. Right, so it's clear as day that Neji gets fucking folded at the end of part 1. That's not a discussion. Now, final Chunin exam Neji versus Sasuke is interesting. Now, the most contentious part that 6 discussed was the speed. Now, this is what I do agree with what 6 said. 1, obviously it's stated that Sasuke in base at that point in time was relative in speed to weightless Rock Lee. Is that enough to put him above Neji? No. Why? Because Neji was able to whip Rock Lee's ass, and the only version of Rock Lee that he respected and Guy acknowledged could possibly beat Neji and probably would is 4 or 5 gates Rock Lee. Right, so that isn't enough. Now the Chidori does amp speed. The tough part is quantifying by how much. That's the tough part. There is these vague statements that, oh man, he has a quick body like I do, high speed body like I do. That doesn't necessarily indicate concretely that his speed is above that of Neji, but it leaves it in the realm of possibility. So you can make a rational deduction that it's possible. And what makes it highly possible is the statement in the data book that is canonical, right? That Sasuke was the strongest opponent Gaara's ever faced. And even the very feat itself implies it. Gaara is visibly shaken by Sasuke's presence. He is the first guy to ever damage him. He's the first guy to ever draw blood from Gaara. And he is the first guy to ever push Gaara probably to that extent. So, clearly, it's highly indicated that Sasuke is the best that the Chunin exams have to offer, besides probably, this is a different discussion, but Naruto. Until the end of part 1, that is. So, Sasuke more than likely beats Neji. It's canonically stated that he is the strongest opponent that Gaara's ever faced. So that means he's stronger than 5th Gate's Rock Lee. As much as people don't want to acknowledge that, the canonical literature indicates it. People don't want to acknowledge it. They think that it's outlandish, that it's blasphemous. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what the facts are. And one of the facts are that it's stated in a piece of canonical literature that Sasuke is the strongest opponent that Gaara has ever faced. Point blank, period, end of discussion. Now you could argue semantics, but that's a last desperate attempt of you grasping at straws for something to cling to the possibility of Neji beating Sasuke. It's highly, highly unlikely. And that's just the facts. Alright, we can only make the best rational deduction based on the empirical evidence provided. And the empirical evidence highly suggests that Sasuke beats Neji. Highly suggests it. There's literally a piece of canonical literature stating that he's stronger than an opponent that Guy stated would beat Neji. You can't just disregard that. You can't say narrative implication doesn't work. Oh, the semantics can be argued. Really? Is that so? Is that so? Or do you just have some embedded and ingrained bias within yourself? Ask yourself that question, because I see it all the time. There's definitely embedded and ingrained bias in a lot of individuals within the Naruto fandom, including hardcore fans that take power scaling seriously. I use quotations because being biased doesn't mean you can power scale effectively. It doesn't. The truth is, you got to be as objective as you possibly can. So when there's clearly a shitload of empirical evidence suggesting claim A rather than claim B, why would you cling to claim B? I don't understand that. That's bizarre to me. Is it because of your own bias towards the character? Or is it because of your lack of humility? Truly. There is definitely a lack of humility in a lot of individuals that debate fictional-based reality or any other topic for that matter. I see it all the time. So the key is to be open-minded and to acknowledge the weight of one claim versus your own, even when you're wrong. You got to have that epistemic humility. Right? Truly. And 6 gave a great argument on why Sasuke would beat Neji. It is the best argument, in my opinion, for this very matter at hand, despite it being contentious. Now, there are, like I said at the beginning of this video, decent arguments for Neji. But now that the video is over, I will further claim that the arguments for Sasuke are just better. They're more solid. The very empirical evidence itself, despite your argument, suggests Sasuke would win. Highly suggests it. It's as simple as that. So there you have it, folks. That's my thoughts on this video, on this topic. Great scaling by 6. He basically pulled out every detail within the canonical literature provided that suggests Sasuke would win. You know what's funny? There really isn't any empirical evidence to suggest Neji would win. There really isn't. It's all speculation. It's all based on his lore and our bias for him. Oh, he's the #1 recruit. That means he's the best, right? Oh, he whipped Rock Lee's ass all this time. Why would the 5th Gates be enough to beat Rock Lee? Guy doesn't know everything. Like these very speculative and weak, flimsy arguments that people like to use for Neji. Oh, the semantics of the statement that says that says Sasuke is the strongest can't be proven, but it can be highly guaranteed though, inductively. Right? So it's clear which argument's stronger. Right? And for fun, I have debated for Neji's side. I have done that before. But if someone were to present me this argument, I probably wouldn't be able to beat it. Why? Because there's nothing empirically for Neji. It's all speculative. It's all headcanon, I guess you could say. It's all headcanon. So there you have it, folks. Very interesting. Great video by Six. Let me know your thoughts on it. I'm sure some of you are still going to believe Neji wins. And you know what? I'll say this at least to give you some credit. You're not crazy for saying it. Even though I believe it's highly indicative, based off the empirical evidence, that Sasuke would win. Hey, everyone has their takes. So please let me know your takes. I'm actually very intrigued to hear from Neji's side as well. I'm very intrigued for it. Let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on Six thoughts. If there's any holes in our rational deductions and inductions, please let me know. I actually read all the comments, so yes, I will read it. And, you know, I don't discriminate against anyone's opinion. I don't attack anyone personally for their differing opinions from my own. If they do have different opinions, I just simply like to argue and to see who has the better argument. All right, so there you guys have it, folks. That's going to wrap it up. If you have any other recommendations, please let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one. This is Jay the Great signing out. Peace.